Greetings, programs. This is Let's Code a Full 90, where we go dig into some code and try to make the world a little bit of a better place. I'm your host, Rob Menching, and today we're going to be taking on a little bit of code in the Wix toolset. We've been doing this for the last 3 weeks, and we're going to continue down that same path. I think we might first start with where we left off with a little bit of the code that we had to check in from last week. I don't think we did that. And then we will pick up into the new thing, which is actually going to be work on in MS Build to get incremental build working, which is actually some of the oldest bugs that are assigned to me. But we'll talk about that in a second. So let's go ahead and let's see where it means we're going to jump in first to where we left off last week, which I think was working on the documentation, since everything else kind of went sideways on us. Maybe maybe not. All right, let's see if we can pop up VS Code here and get it to show up. Yeah, that one. Yeah, let's see here. Actually, it looks like maybe we don't have any changes left over. Let's jump over the command prompt, because the command prompt never lies. The command prompt always tells the truth. Well, that's because we're going to go ask Git straight up. All right, so let's go back here, look at Wix web, Git status. Oh, I guess we did get it all set up. All right, so we committed last stream. So that means we do get to start in Wix. So up here you can see the remnants of my last build that I wanted to get everything prepped and ready for us when we get here. So I'm going to reopen code right here, and we'll pick up coding in here. Now, I've been doing a lot of work for the last, weeks on getting MS Build working in the Wix V4. Lots of MS Build features coming all around, making it better in CI/CD. A lot of it around SDK style projects and really minimal projects, and we might see some of that today. And it's starting to finally work. But one of the big things that is not working is incremental build. So let's go back here and look at my bugs that are open. So what we're looking at here is all bugs in Wix 4 assigned to me that are still open and, well, that are issues as opposed to pull requests. This is our issue repo and the Wix toolset. You can see the things we're working on here. And if you look at these last few things, 1, 2, 3, all of them are very old bugs. July 2013, July 2013, July 2013. Ancient bugs from a long time ago. I'm talking about incremental build. And incremental build is... it can be challenging, things like that, and it's not working yet here even, but these things we're talking about when you used a merge module. We had incremental build working in Wix v3 if you just built your Wix code. If you built again, same MSI would be there, no big deal here. But as soon as you added a tag extension or a binary Wix lib or a merge module, then every time you built, you'd rebuild again. And the reason for that is that these particular 3 things, the binary Wix lib, the merge module, and tag extension, had binaries inside them that would then be included into your outer project and would kick off all of the problems that you could have, all the problems that you would have without having any code, or with the binaries coming in. So then it would see those other binaries. They would have different timestamps of everything else, and they would kick your incremental build and everything be busted. Now it turns out in Wix 4, we have incremental build broken right now because, well, I've been working on them as build targets. So today we're going to get incremental build working hopefully in the Wix 4 targets if we get all the way to the end of today's work. And then we'll see how much better we have for merge modules, tag extension, and binary Wix libs, and see if we can actually get those to not be breaking incremental build as well. The end result, I don't know if we'll get it here in these 90 minutes, but if we did get this working, this is going to be some of the oldest bugs that are assigned to me in Wix 4, all knocked out. I have a lot of hope. So, where do we start? Well, we're going to go start in some new projects that I just opened up, or some new data that I just added to the Wix toolset. Let me bring VS Code back up because I keep opening and closing it, and it's not streaming it. All right, there we go. Let's see, get it sized up so you can see it. All righty then. So I have the whole Wix 4 repo opened up in VS Code, which snapped to my screen, which is not what I wanted. Let's see here. All right. Oh, here we go, VS Code. And you'll notice here when I go dig into source, into test, which is our integration test, there is burn, and now there's also this Wix thing, which I've just been playing with. And I've just been throwing in lots and lots of different kinds of projects. Creating project references from Wix projects to all these different things is going to be a huge test case. And so that's kind of what I'm been working on a lot, spending a lot of time trying to get that all straightened out and working well, because there's a lot of challenges with it. And so in so doing, I'm going to try to, we're going to try to get incremental build working. So what I have here are these Wix projects, which is a library. So this is a Wix lib that builds a Wix lib. And then we have a Wix project builds a merge module. We have a Wix project builds an MSI that is that references a VCX project, so a native app in it. And then this is experiments on how to do multi-arch stuff. We're going to ignore that for now. And the easiest thing we could start with is a Wix project that references, a Wix project that is a library that references a DLL. So if we go look at this code here, all right, so what is it doing? This is a library that has the vcxproj.dll in it, and the vcxproj.dll is this C++ code compiled. Nothing really special about this code. In fact, there's nothing in it. It's just enough to make a DLL and for us to reference it in our library. So that's the file source. We're going to throw it in whatever directory. And then just for giggles and make sure the extensions worked, we added a UI ref. I'm going to make this a little bigger, a couple times bigger. Let's see if that's a little bigger. A little easier to read. That's super easy to read, probably. There we go. How about that? It's middle ground. All right, so then we have a Wix proj, or a reference to Wix UI, just to make sure that that worked in this as well. So let's go look at, I don't know if many people have seen Wix 4's new SDK style projects, but they are much smaller than the old ones. This one is not because of all the other junk I've been putting in it for this test purposes. We're going to break down all the stuff we added. So if I was to make this an XML file, it will be pretty printed. All right, in the future, a Wix project is going to look a lot more like this. And you can see in the end, we just have, I don't think I need these project references anymore. I was obviously doing some experiments. Yeah, there we go. So this would be it. This would be the references, or what a new SDK style project would look like for building a library, aka a Wix lib, that binds its files into that Wix lib, creates a project reference to the DLL to make sure that the native DLL gets built before it, and also then references the Wix UI so that we have that hooked into this Wix lib. This is so much better than the previous projects. It's not even funny. So, but we are going to be updating the test projects, and this requires updating a NuGet, building it, do all that kind of stuff, which takes a while. So instead, what we're going to do is add a whole bunch of extra noise. So we don't need these extra project references for today. And instead, we're going to be putting this into the location where I build, which is actually now going to be here. Source is where I do most of my work, and then Let's Code is where we do this work here, so that I don't get I can be working on something in my Wix code, and then when we come here, I have a nice isolated world. So what are we saying here? We're saying grab this Wix SDK from this particular folder, which hopefully is already built. So let's go ahead and do a quick look here, and I'm going to need to bring the command prompt. So so if we do ls here, there we go, SDK props. So this is where we're building Wix 4 right now. So now we should be able to get our loop every time we build. I want to be updating these targets, and I don't want to build the whole Wix tool set. So I will build only these particular things that I need to do our tests. We'll get this as we start getting the loop going on. We'll see that. Anyway, so I'm pointing at both the direct reference to the SDK, and then I'm overwriting the location where the binaries come from to force them to grab the binaries that I want out of all this. All right. Now, you know what? I want to try to bring, do I? See, I normally don't use the command prompt inside VS Code. I should practice with that, but I'm a little nervous about doing that. Let's see if we are able to bring the command prompt up here with VS Code and see if we can get it to squeeze in. Let's make it a little smaller, or a lot smaller actually, and bring it a lot out of the way, but not too small that we can't read it anymore. Let's see. Let's see, is this enough? Doof. All right. A little bit of width. There we, oh yes, there we go. That's nice. Okay, that's that. Now let's go ahead and bring our VS Code over here on the side. And we'll make it a bit smaller. There we go. And bigger at the same time. Here we go. On the fly updating of the stream. Good content? I don't know. Okay, and then bring the side back in a little bit. All right. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna leave the border off and I'm gonna make this much smaller. Okay, now we can see our two windows at the same time so that I can go back and forth. So this is an old habit I have from working in, oh gosh, all the way back to Office, where having a command prompt and then the editor open at the same time is just the way I do it. I know all this stuff is integrated in one editor and I probably should practice that, but I don't feel like doing that right now. So we're gonna have our command prompt here on the left and then I have my editor on the right, and we're gonna end up looping around and around in this, hopefully in a fairly tight loop. So let's go ahead and try to make that. So source, test, Wix, and then we're in our test projects. All right, so we have test projects. We have a bunch of them. We are in the Wix proj library for VCX proj and all that kind of stuff. Now, if we look here, we have this go command that I wrote a while ago, and this, of course, is going to refer to my my other location. So let's change all this to let's code. Ooh, let's spell correctly. All right. Then we'll get this batch file. So what is this batch file doing? It's going through and cleaning out all of our existing projects, all the things that we might depend on from here. The big thing being the Wix Toolset SDK. We'll go dig into that one. But then you'll see we delete a whole bunch of test projects just to kind of get them nice and clean every time. Delete their OBJ file, their bin folder, their debug folder, all that kind of good stuff. And then I run a build here, always doing a restore because SDK style projects have to get the updates into the NuGet cache because of the way they reference it. I've avoided that, but we'll always do a restore. And then I'm getting a binary log just in case we need to go look at that, which we probably will. So I'm gonna have to bring that window up on this here too. We'll look at that one probably full screen because there's a lot of data in the binary log that will help us figure out what's going wrong with incremental build. So now that we've looked at this, let's see if this will run for us real quick. So I'm just do a quick go and let it go. Go command, yes. And I'm going to import devenv 17. All right, so what this is a PowerShell script that brings all the Visual Studio developer environment variables and all that into my world so I can actually have this command work. All right, so a whole lot of file not existing, and then renew a build, and then, create project reference task in this location was not found. All right, well, let's go look and see. That is saying that this binary file was not found, and it wants the x86 one. All right, here we go. Let's go see if it's true. Is it lying to me or not? That's not lying to me. Oh, no net461. All right, so there's the tools. Net472. Hey, guess what? I've been working on this at a separate branch, and I think it was Bob's work to switch the Wix toolset minimum bar, which you might remember from our last meeting, from 461 to 472. That has come through. So I need to reference 472 instead of 461. All right. So this is the problem with all these things being in here tight. Let's see. I don't have any 462 reference. All right, cool. So hopefully now that we've switched to 472, this go command will build. There we go. Build, 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 build. Whole bunch of output. That's the use. All right, cool. This green means that we passed, and that our we could see that our Wix proj is here, and that our Wix lib was built to this location. So let's go ahead and just double check. So in bin, yep, debug. Hey, look, there's a Wix lib, and it's 11307. That means it's not tiny because it's so that means that it does have the binary in it. So I think we're going to declare that good as a place to get started. Now, what we would like to see is if I then said ms build right here, that it would, my alias is msb. So if we run ms build here, hopefully we will see it do nothing, right? And we can see it did core compile again. So that means if we run it again, core compile, it built again. So we are unfortunately not being successful in incremental build at all right here, at all. So we need to look and see what's causing the MS build to require us to build. So let's go ahead and create a binary log, and then I'm going to get the all-powerful up on this screen, the all-powerful bin log viewer. All right, let's bring this up. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this thing big enough, small enough. Let's go ahead and see if I can drop that on there, and then let's go here and add a new window. All right, there we go. That's the guy I want. Okay, so we can see this. I don't know if it's too big on the screen. It's all right. Let me see if I make this window smaller. Grab it here and make this bigger. There we go. That's much more readable, right? Okay, we're gonna call that good. And a little bit taller then. I wish I was a baller. Wish I was taller. All right, wish I had a girl, I would call her. Okay, all right. So what we're looking at here is the bin log for the Wix proj that we just built. And I'm going to be jumping back and forth between here and then making edits to our code and coming back. So what we're looking for in here, for those of you that aren't deep in MS build, is we're going to be looking for what caused our core compile project, or target, rather, the target inside MS build to have to be built again. So here's core compile, and this thing is so awesome. It tells us, hey, I'm building this completely because this output file, obj debug wix proj library vcx wix proj bind built outputs file list.txt does not exist. All right, so that's a file that is built by, or produced by, the Wix toolset, or rather it's supposed to be produced by the Wix toolset. The bottom of the command prompt is cut off. Ooh, that's good to know. All right, well, I'll fix it when I go back over there. Too tall, too short. All right, so let's see. So debug Wix proj library. Yeah, so this file's not being created anymore. These files are interesting to talk about. So why don't we go back to VS Code, and I will fix the command prompt a little bit. All right, there's the bottom of it. Okay, and we're going to open Wix Targets, which is the root of all of everything. All right, so this is the Wix Targets. This is where all the magic has happened. This is where I've been spending most of the last couple of months of Wix code, Wix coding time, deep inside here. So what we're looking for is the bind built, right? Bind built output file. All right, there are these three files in the Wix toolset that are created by the compiler, or rather, these files are used to communicate between MS Build and the Wix toolset. The Wix toolset's a little complicated for calculating our inputs and outputs of MS Build targets, because you have your Wix code. For example, let's open, let's see if we open up the library. How about this one? We were just looking at this one. So if we look at this library, the inputs to this source code here are actually this VCX proj plus this extension. And so we have to know, has this file, if this file has changed, then we need to rebuild the Wix lib that contains it. Naturally, you're like, oh, that's simple. The problem is that this is stored in source code. So the Wix proj doesn't explicitly say, hey, I need that DLL. Now we do have this project reference, and that would be enough normally, but we don't know. Maybe we have a file source reference off to some checked in file, some checked in text file, or like the license.rtf file, or any number of different things it could be. So in the end, to figure out what files are inputs into the Wix compile step, we have to go and figure out from all the source files, hey, here's all the things out there that could come in here. It's like, well, that's the only thing that knows that is the compiler itself, which means we need to compile before we know all the inputs. All right, so the first time we build, we have to we don't know all of, well, we know the inputs that are inside this project file plus our project references. And if the Wix lib doesn't exist, the first time it's easy enough, it'll just go out and build it. So yay. As part of that process, the compiler then needs some way to communicate and say, hey, here are the files that I ended up putting into the output. aka all of the list of all the things that went into here to get that output. Let me go ahead and list them. And if we look at this, actually we can look at that file. So there's a couple of them that are being produced. So if we look in the OBJ and the debug, we can see a couple files are being produced. No, I guess not. Wait, where'd they go? They're not in bin. Whoa, where are those files? Oh, well, this could be a bigger problem than we thought. Huh. Yeah, so this is a standard MS build file that says, hey, here are the files that were part of this build output. Wow, we're gonna have to go fix a couple things. So the first thing is combine. All right, anyway, as the output, it lists the files that are being inputs. And then also we need to say, here are all the files where they were output. So we have to say where the files came from, the inputs, and then we have to list the outputs from the target and say, here are all the things that this that we produce by calling this target. And then what MS Build will say is, all right, I'll take your inputs, I'll take your outputs, I'll compare those two things and see if any of the timestamps are newer on the inputs than the outputs. And if they're newer, then, oh, I guess I have to rebuild this target. If they're not newer, then a la incremental build, you get to skip that step and move on to the rest of everything else. All right, so it's very important for us to get the inputs and outputs correct on the core compile target, because that's the thing that's getting built. And as we saw, it's because this text file is missing. And honestly, it looks like a couple other files are missing. So it's possible that MS Build's binary log only reported the first thing in the list of things that it says, hey, here's what I need. And it didn't find the others. All right, so what are these files? The bind contents file, this is the set of files that became content into the output. So in the case of an MSI where you cab up all your files, the bind contents are all of the files that ended up being cabbed together. Pretty straightforward. The compiler obviously will know that when it gets to the end of the build step, like, oh, okay, here are the files that I put in the cabs, or in the case of binary Wixlib, here's the file I put into the Wixlib, all that kind of good stuff. All goes in here. All right. The bind outputs file is the list of all files that were output. So all the things that end up getting copied to the output location. This file was also missing. All right. And then the bind built outputs file is special. It's a subset of the bind outputs file, if my memory is serving correctly. And we'll double check this in the targets and see how it's used. This is a list of all the files that were actually built by the compiler. So not just copied. So for example, you could have a text file that does not get embedded into the MSI file. It could be on the outside next to the MSI. Now, the compiler does not cab that, did not create a cab, but it did take that text file and put it next to the MSI. So the text file and the MSI that was built will be listed as outputs, but the built outputs will only list the MSI. And that distinction is important because if we go look and see where bind outputs is listed, let's go see how these things are used. All right, this is passing them into our core compile step right there. So we jumped a little bit ahead here, but real quick, these are the attributes on the task calling into the Wix build task, which is our core compile output that lists that how we say, hey, compiler, I want you to output your bind contents, your bind outputs file, and your bind built outputs to this file location. And it's going to be in the intermediate output path in the language and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go see why those files don't exist here in a little bit, or not a little bit, very shortly. All right, if we look up here as the inputs to this target, we should see the bind built files as an inputs, and I don't see it here. So it must have been tossed into one of these groups. I don't know. We might have a couple bugs here. We're gonna have to go figure all this out. So this is where we're starting. And then the outputs, here they are. Oh, right. These are the outputs. So here's the bind built outputs file. And then the bind built outputs and the bind built outputs file, right? So we have to go figure out why these files are not being created, or at least not being found in the right place. Here we go. Bind build outputs. Yes, right. So, and the bind inputs. All right. So let's go look at these bind inputs and the bind outputs. So if we go look at bind inputs, we have this task that says, hey, read previous inputs and built outputs. Guess what that does? Well, it reads the contents file that we saw up there, and it reads the built outputs file, and it puts all of the list of lines, they're just line after line after line, into these bind inputs and bind built outputs items. So now we can say, hey, here's was our previous bind inputs. Here's our what we previously built. So on the first build, these will be empty because there's no files and it won't read anything. On subsequent builds, it'll say, oh, here are the files that were inputs. Let me go add that to this list of things that you can use in the core compile. If we jump up here, as inputs to the core compile. So there's the bind build inputs, and here's the bind build outputs. And then we also list the bind outputs file as an output to say, hey, this should be created as well. And as we were seeing in the task, it was not. It was not at all. Or sorry, in the log, it was not. Okay, so if we go back if we look over here actually, and we go up, we'll see our command line. Now, the command line to the Wix exe to build all this stuff is long, but in here somewhere should be our bind outputs. You know what? I'm just going to grab this, copy it, and let's see if I can create a new file here and paste it. Woohoo! All right, great. Wow, that's kind of nice. All right, so there's our bind outputs file. So we can see the outputs files here. Bind build outputs file command line switch was passed, and the contents file command line switch was passed. All right, this is all good. That says at least we know that we said in the targets file, hey, pass these command line or pass these files to the wix.exe. This is a dump of the command line that's going to be passed to wix.exe when it's run, in this case in prog. So we should trust that these were actually passed in to the wix.exe. So I think the thing we're going to have to do next is actually take this command line, go put it in the debugger, and go step into wix.exe and on down, and hopefully all this will work here, start stepping all the way down and seeing that, well, see these files get created somewhere. So let's go ahead and grab this command, but I want it, I'm going to need it to be put back together properly. So we'll take those out. And if I hit backspace once, is it going to do the right thing? Wow, I think it did the right thing. Oh, that was actually way cooler than I thought it was going to turn out. That is very nice. Thank you for putting that all back together very much. Visual Studio Code, you rock. All right, so we're going to jump over now to Visual Studio because I don't like debugging in Visual Studio Code as much. Just not my thing. And we'll make this a little bigger here. All right. I haven't tried this. I should have done this before today, but we'll see what happens. We're going to go debug wix.exe. Haha, and here we are in debug general. Yes, please. Thank you. Command line arguments. I have a lot of them. Ooh, thank you for auto expanding. Working directory. We probably should set the working directly to the same place that we were running from before, just for completeness sake. It shouldn't matter now because some of the paths are relative, so that's good. It's not a remote machine. We don't need any environment variables. I don't think we're going to need any native code debugging because we shouldn't be going down in there. Let's go ahead and say thank you very much. And what happens when we hit F11? I probably should set Wix as the startup project here. All right, here we go. Da-da-da-da. Into the Wix. Hey, I already built all this. Okay, cool. So you can't see it, but Wix, there's a command window running up over on the right. I don't need these tools. Thank you very much. All right. Wix XSD, you know what? We're going to leave that open in case we get to a little doc at the end of the day, but I don't think we're going to have time. All right, let's take a quick peek at our args. 80 args. That sounds about right. Look at all of them. Woohoo. A lot of args being passed into this, which is all good. Okay, cool. Go run the Wix toolset, get our command, and then go execute it. All right, what command are we in? We are in the build command because that's what we're doing. We're building with all those 80 arguments that we had passed in. All right, so hey, look, this to do. There's actually an issue open on that, so we will maybe one day we'll be writing that here, or I might do it. All right, I don't care about most of these things, but I do care about this contents file. Oh. Well, that's unexpected, but that would explain why we don't have a contents file. Yeah, we said pass a contents file in on the command line, and it's not set on the command line object. So we're going to go back here to the jump to the command line object, and let's go see where this gets set. Wait. This command, please. Contents file. 2 references. Oh my goodness. Okay, good. Parser, get next arg. I can't see the windows that pop up when I hover over things. Interesting. Well, I'm not doing that much. Oh yeah, you can't see them at all. All right, yeah, here I am floating over things trying to see where they're referenced. All right, so I saw that there are some references. All right, so let's go ahead and put a breakpoint here, and a breakpoint here, and a breakpoint here, and we're going to start over because this said that we didn't get our log file. So I'm going to hit F11, jump back in, step, 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 do the run. I should really set a breakpoint down here. Wait, we've already parsed. The command line was already parsed. Okay, well, that didn't work at all. Let's go back to the command line and let's go see where we create him. Scroll up, execute basic. All right, let's go see what happens when we wait. This is the build command. Where is my command line object, please? Where are you parsed? Let's see, where's your parse command? There, try parse argument. Right, we're gonna get called by the system. Right. Okay, here we go. Run. Probably could set a breakpoint here to see when it gets created too. Okay, let's go get into the command line parsing. This is gonna do it here. Yeah, get all our arguments. Load this, then parse the standalone command line. All right. Okay. Build and command, and now we're going to get more switches, right? So what argument are we looking at now? Out. Okay, so I guess we could set a breakpoint here and just let it roll for a while until we see the one we want. So let's go ahead and drop a watch here. Thank you for our, okay, good. Try parse. Great. I want to watch arg, please. Thank you. All right, that's our output. That's right. Output type. Yep, that's going to be Wix lib, right? Okay, PDB type. D for, oh gosh, we have lots of defined variables here. Step. I'm going to set we don't need this one and drop down here. And the report error. All right, let's see what happens. D. Lots of dash Ds. Okay. Oh. Haha. All right, that was my mistake. Oh, is that what's going to do it? See, this is probably came from when I fixed the command line inside VS Code and brought it out. Let's see what happens when we go out here. Okay. Well, that's an interesting thing. I'm going to write a notepad over here. So what I just realized is that the parser, we have a number of bugs open on the parser. And in this case, it's not, the Wix.exe does not stop when hitting an invalid argument. Does not, like, what we say, error and abort when hitting an invalid argument. Instead, it continues without finishing processing the command line and creates confusing situations like this. So, hey, guess what? We just found a bug. So we will go do that. All right, to work around that bug, we'll go properties. I don't need most of these -D things here, so I'm going to take out a lot of them because they're just kind of in the way. D. Look how many there are. All right. Okay. We'll keep one. There. I copied it. So if I need to bring those back, I can. I know we're messing up the test a little bit, but I'm pretty confident we don't need any of those -Ds. So any of those defined variables. That's essentially what it's doing. Define this variable with that value. And so I think, yeah, we'll be able to run with that. Save. Is there a save? Huh. Interesting. Oh, you can't see this. I can't see that box either. Okay, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to figure out how to get Visual Studio to show its boxes. All right. End result was here. I'll show you. We had all these command lines all these command lines in the debug window, and I've decided to take them all out for now, and I will bring them back later if we need them for some reason to get the real test, but I don't think the defines are what are going to correct the problem. Okay, so let's rock and roll again. Oh, I hit F5. Am I going to hit a breakpoint? Yes, good. All right, arg out. Let's go out here, make sure we hit a breakpoint before we leave. There we go. Okay, so I don't leave and miss it. All right, arg, that's the path where we're outputting. Output type, that gets parsed. PDB gets parsed. PDB type gets. One, we had left 1-D in. Intermediate folder, that's a good thing. Contents file, that's what we want to see. All right, it is a switch. Yes, it is. Find the parameter. Contents file. Contents file equals that. Contents file equals that path. And that's even the correct path. Okay, well, that's a good sign. So then what are we missing? Okay, so let's see. Outputs file. So let's go see. It's going to go set the outputs file to the value. Oh, right. They were set to null because we had an invalid parameter. Okay. All this code is fine. All this code is fine. All we were hitting was an invalid command line parameter. So, all right, this code is all good. Okay, so that little detour, all to find a bug saying that command line parsing is not robust enough yet for what we expect, which means the original issue that we saw about not setting the, about not having those parameters set was all because of my -D, which was just my mistake. All right, cool. So when we get back around, we try to parse. There's another command line, bind files. Bind files. Yeah, this is the command that tells Wix to create a library with all the files compressed inside. All right, great. So let's bring that out, and we're adding some band paths. Yep. And here's our source code to actually compile. Yay. Great. Now we should have our build command with contents file and outputs file set. No, wait. Okay. Wait, let's go finish here. Yeah, it's not set because we just parsed the command line. Now we come in here and we bring it from the command line to set into this object. There we go. Contents file, yay, all of that to show that, yes, this does work. And if I hadn't had that -D, we wouldn't have hit that. But we found an example of a bug that needs to get fixed where it needs to error and not continue. All right, I have Notepad tracking that issue. Let's carry on. So we don't really care about compiling because the compiling part of this is not where we have problems. We want to go down and see the binding part. Whoa. System cannot find. So I have an error over here. It says system cannot find proj library vcx dll obj. Okay. Wix lib. Okay, that's another command line mistake. All right, I have to bring the command line over. All right, I'm gonna go bring it up. Let's see, properties. I know you can't see this. General, open debug. Yeah, this is the part you can't see. Okay, fine. Let's grab this command line. So here I was praising VS Code for like doing the magic, and I don't think it did perfect magic. All right. Out this. What is this proj? Proj. Oh, this is weird. Oh, wait. Let's go Wix Proj. Oh, yeah. See, there's an extra space in there. That's the problem. That's the folder that exists. Okay. Well, yeah, that's busted. And then it tried to find the other thing in the source input. Okay, let's see if we have any more crazy spaces in this. That's the first one, so maybe I didn't use VS Code properly. Nope. See, here's another one. C : space. Look at it. Ah, too many spaces here. All right, the magic did not work. Too bad. Okay, this. Fix those. Yeah, there's too many spaces back here. Too many spaces. Intermediate folders, that. Contents files is that. Here we are fixing our command line. What I thought would be an easy grab was hard because I made my console window so small. All right, let's go. Man, where did all these spaces come from? Bind path, that's an okay bind path. Yeah. Another bind path. But too many spaces. You know what? I know what created these spaces. Visual Studio created these spaces. There we go. Yep, Visual Studio created these spaces. And there it is, 2 spaces. All right. Visual Studio created the spaces when I pasted it here, it automatically tried to format the code to match real stuff, and in so doing added a bunch of spaces because like, oh, those are minuses. You should have space around your minus signs. Okay. Man, so many issues here. All right. The reality of software development. All right, General, I'm going to go fix the command line now. Hopefully, this is finally good. Close. I'm not sure how I feel about this new debug properties page. Okay. After all that, can we go back to the build command and get to, how about just get to compile phase? F5. Yeah, we're done parsing arguments for now. And we're done with the command. Fine. All right. Yay, we finally got here. Okay, cool. I'm going to assume compiling works because compiling doesn't have anything to do with the inputs and outputs. It just goes through and parses all the WXS code and turns it into the intermediate representation, which is what this Wix object is here. It's the intermediate file information, and it has all the goo that goes into, that gets fed down into the linker later. All right, so we're creating a linker library, intermediate field context, right? So here we are, bind paths, Wixels. Oh, okay, doesn't look like library paths. Automatic step over. What am I saying? Oh, probably the properties. Do you want to be notified when I've... No, thanks. All right. I do not need to be notified that it's stepping over a property getter when the getter is trivial. Okay. So when building a library, it looks like we do not have the inputs and outputs files. So the librarian is going to come in here, combine all of these intermediates, get all of their content, and if we're binding files, where is the bind files part? Yeah. All right, we have to dig in here. Resolve file paths. Oops, there it is, right there. Right there. Resolve file paths to files to embed. Yep, there. If we're binding files, we need to track all these files. And then these are the files that we were inputting and outputting. Wow. So the librarian just bypasses this stuff completely. The librarian is what we call the code that creates library files. So not only does he not create an outputs file, he doesn't create a contents file or any of that kind of stuff. Ooh, that's great. That means we have a bit more work here to do just for lib files. All right, so that dream of being able to get really far into all this, yeah, it's not going to happen. But you know what? We've got ourselves set up really well. So hopefully, there's a dream that if we get the contents file and the bind outputs files, both of them written correctly, then we will be... everything else will just work, because a lot of the rest of the stuff is inherited from Wix 3, which was working, and then we'd be to the point where we'd be like, all right, how are merge modules doing? Okay, so for this to work, we're going to have to provide the contents files, the built output files, and all those things. All right, so let's go. Let's go back here and let's look at the library phase. So we have the library context that's going to get passed in. Yeah. So the library context is all the information we need, presumably, to tell the librarian how to do its work. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go look at the bind phase and compare it. I'm going to look at where the contents outputs file is used and the build outputs file is used. Yeah, there's the contents file. And this is for the layout. Surprised this hasn't been used more. All right, let's look everywhere that contents file is used. It's passed to the layout context. All right, so let's go look at the layout context and how it's used in here. And it was called contents file, right? Yep, contents file, yep. If it is not empty, create the contents file. And how do we do that? We create it based off of the files that were tracked coming into all this. Yes, okay. The tracked files. That makes sense. And we create the contents file from the list of tracked files. Yep, where the tracked file was an input. So tracked files are a system used in the Wix toolset to say, hey, these are files that, well, I'm tracking. Here's files where things that I came as inputs, and you can also have track files that are outputs, and you can track files that are intermediate. So it's essentially a way that the Wix toolset could say, or that any part of the process can add to this collection of track files as it's going along, saying, hey, here's all of your I did these operations, and a side effect of that was here's a file that I need now as an input, or oh, I did these operations, and by the way, I generated this file, it's an output, or oh, hey, I did all this work and I generated this file, it's an intermediate file, you can just get rid of it later. So we could see what this enum looks like here. Oops, not plus. Equals, yeah. Input, temporary, intermediate, and final. Yeah, so files that are temporary that, yeah. This says it pretty well. Temporary files that are deleted before the build completes, and intermediate files are files that stick around for subsequent builds, but are neither an input nor an output. It's like something we did that we want to hold on to for multiple builds, usually as some sort of caching to speed things up. And they don't get deleted the same way. All right. So that's the way the contents file is created for the MSIs and things like that when they have files being created. So yeah, we clean the temp files. Temp files, yes. So all files that are temporary, go ahead and try to delete them. Yep. That's temp files. All right, so the question is, should we use the layout creator? And the layout creator is the thing that runs at the end and lays all the files out where they're supposed to go. So that allows, I mentioned all those internal processes, just add things to tracked files as inputs or outputs or track file. It allows all of that stuff to be done, and then at the end, the Wix toolset says, okay, I've done all my processing, let's get all these files in the right place. Deleting temp files, moving, and then getting inputs and outputs into their appropriate place based off of what the input was. So we probably want this layout creator to run in every build transaction, and right now, it's only running in this bind. So binding is the process in the Wix toolset of going out, grabbing all of the stuff you need, plus taking the intermediate file, or what the compiler generated and did all the work, what the linker then figured out what parts you actually needed. The binder is the thing that takes this in-memory representation of, hey, this is what the final package should contain in it, but just pointers to everything out there. The binder then says, I will take that and make it real, and it goes and puts files on disk, does final calculations to create actual MSI packages or patches or merge modules or bind bundle, burn bundles, all those things. So the binder is the thing that does all the actual physical manipulation on disk. Every operation before that is all in memory except for the reading of source files. So it's not exactly true, but it's mostly true. So that means that we need layout again. So what is this using? This is using the bind result for tracked files plus the file transfers. You use the intermediate folder bin, and then this reset ACLs is a historical thing I think is going away. Probably in Wix 4, I don't think we need that anymore. It was used for when Wix 3 would lay out to network shares, and the files would maintain their internal ACL instead of the network share ACL. So by resetting the ACLs, the files where they'd be laid out on a network share would then get the ACLs of the network share and thus be accessible, versus having some internal file or ACL from like some user somewhere on the Windows machine, then move to the network. You're like, that local user account specified or specific to that machine isn't accessible outside the network. That's what reset ACLs was fixing. Given the way that we create files and move files around now, I don't think that's a problem going forward. It also is really the only problem, I think, on like DFS shares or something like that. I don't know how many people still use build systems like that or use DFS in their build systems. Maybe a lot. So I really want to try to find a way to use this. I want to bring the layout command out and make it reusable. If I did that, what do I have to pass in? I have to pass in the intermediate folder, the bind results. I have to pass in the tracked files and the file transfers. Okay. And we won't have any file transfers for the Wix lib. Intermediate folder is easy enough to pass in. Cancellation token is always passed in for all just being canceled. So that's easy enough. Yeah, I think I want to make this a function and call it at the end of at the end here. Yeah, Zach, exactly. That reset ACLs thing is really old, and yeah, you won't have to see it. Now in Wix 3, I think there's a command line switch you can pass to suppress the reset ACLs, but in Wix 4, I think we're probably going to be able to get rid of it due to the way that the new thing gets. Honestly, due to the new way we're using MS Build, there's a lot of changes in the MS Build work that I'm really, really hoping just make Wix more like everything else and just works better. The current Wix 3.5 targets are based off of MS Build, 1, like the very beginning, the very, very, very beginning of MS Build. So, and because we've been maintaining backwards compatibility in Wix 3 for, a decade or more, they've gotten really, really crusty. I'm quite excited. I'm finally getting the targets in the Wix 3, in Wix 4 cleaned up enough that I'm actually pretty hopeful that we're going to end up in a good place. All right. Enough of that. Let's go ahead and, so here's pre-process, all that kind of stuff. Default output. Yeah, okay. You know what? I'm going to do it. Let's just see what happens. Worse comes to worse, we undo it. That's what source control is for. Extract method, please. Yes. This dot. No. Layout files. This dot, please. You are going to go and slide down because I don't want you here. I think I want you after pre-process. Actually, no. We're doing alphabetical order right now, I think. Okay. Load. Yeah, all right. All right. I guess you do get to stay here then. Okay. Now, I do not want to pass the bind result in. I want to pass the bind result dot tracked files and the bind result dot file transfers. Yes, that's exactly what I want. And are you going to do the right thing if I just hit Control Dot? Yes. Yes. And then I'm going to change you to tracked files. And I'm going to change you to file transfers. And everybody's going to be happy. All right. We've done no damage. We've done nothing. Really excited for the MS Build updates. Well, I don't know if you're here in the beginning, Zach. That might be the amount we're going to get to this week of the MS Build stuff, unfortunately. It looks like we ended up inside the Wix toolset pretty fast. Now, if you're just looking for the MS Build updates and Wix 4 working better, well then, yeah, you're going to be really happy about that. One of the things that I'm finding in the Wix 4, just now that I've got the targets really cleaned up and tightened, there's still a lot of bugs for me. Not a lot. There's a number of bugs I still have to fix. But I'm quite happy with the results, and what I'm finding is that Wix is now playing nicely within the MS Build system way better than it ever has before. We had some really nasty stuff around when a .NET Standard 2.0 project, an extension, so it was a CS project, depended on a Wix project that then depended on a native project. It was all kinds of goofy and not working out. But now, with my latest changes, it looks like it just flows straight through and everything works exactly what you expect it to, including restore. So, and because Wix 4 is moving to SDK style projects with, you'll just be able to reference the Wix 4 SDK off of NuGet. Boom, bring it down, restore your projects. Hey, you're off to the races. None of this crazy, let's fight with the GitHub Actions guys trying to keep their images up to date with the latest Wix tool set and all the dependencies that we need. Can you tell I'm excited about that part? Yes, it's going to be very good. Okay, so we have layout files here at the end of binding. So this is when we're creating MSIs, merge modules, things like that. In library, we also need to do that if we're binding. So let's go ahead and look at that. Intermediates now. Do we need the intermediate folder? Intermediate folder, intermediate folder, intermediate folder. How do you, Mr. Layout, use the intermediate folder? Intermediate folder. Oh, temp files. Okay, well, that makes sense, I guess. Clean. Split unique folder paths. Clean. This is all clean. Okay, fine. So the reason that I'm not seeing that being available where, let's see, jump back here. I don't need the intermediate folder for the librarian because the librarian doesn't happen to use it, but it might. So let's see. Is it this dot intermediate? Nope. Where is intermediate folder coming down from? Let's jump up and, oh, it's probably command line. Bind files, bind paths. Yes, so let's look here. Intermediate folder is on, yeah, see here. This, okay. Library phase. Yeah, okay, let's try this again. This dot intermediate, oh, did I not do, whatever. I thought that's what I was looking for. Okay, so now tracked files. We don't have a bind result. We have, oh, the librarian just does a combine and it goes straight to the intermediate. Oh, man. All right, so one of the things, the big things in the Wix toolset that we've done in Wix 4 is we've really made the pipeline system inside the whole compiler process, build process, compiler. I'm just gonna say compiler. I really mean compiler, linker, binder. The whole pipeline, the extensibility in that much more consistent across the whole thing. Where in Wix 3, you could drop in at certain points and with extensions and do certain things. But now because we have a single build command straight out the bat, that we were able to create a single unified pipeline and have all this data flow through it. So that's what this context does, is it's this interface so you can create an extension against the Wix toolset.extensibility assembly, which is where this library context lives. I can go jump to it real quick and I'll show you the, hey, I decompiled the extensibility assembly for you. Thank you very much. And it has all the data that you might want to use with this extension, or sorry, as an extension, extending the library space. Now, we didn't have a lot of people extending the library, but being very consistent through the whole world is very cool. And in a lot of cases, the result of these processes is complicated, like more complicated than simple. And so we would return an entire context. In this case, we chose to return just the library. So changing the type on this would be unfortunate at this point. All right, okay. So I don't really want to do that, but I can add more types here. Adding is pretty straightforward because if your code didn't reference it, then it doesn't break you. You have to recompile, but that's kind of the space that we're in with the Wix tools anyway. If you take a new Wix drop, you have to recompile against the recompile your extensions against that until we get to done, and we're not going to change the interfaces anymore. So the issue here now is I need to get a tracked files and potentially even a file transfers, although libraries don't do file transfers because they just put everything inside them. They don't end up putting a bunch of files around all over the place. So, but I do need to get attract files into the library and back out. And here the bind result came from the binder. So let's look at here. Yes, that's resolve context. Where's the bind context here? Yeah, there's our bind context. Big bad bind context. And we do not pass into him the file transfer. This is really unfortunate that the binder, here, let's look at the bind. See, if we look at the results of a bind, we can see it's a bit more, it's a bind result, which is a bit more complicated. It specifies as file transfers, as tracked files, and the Wix out, the output that it's going to be creating. Oh, man. So I'm really wishing that the librarian had a librarian result. So all this stuff came back out that way. And if we go look at this here, and go look at the back bind here for like an MSI. Hey, look, we're in the MSI place where it creates all the MSIs. We can see the bind result is created from the execute command. If we go to the end, it's always at the end. Yeah, see, this is where the result gets created at the end. Yeah, it just says, hey, here are the file transfers of track files that I've been building up throughout this huge process. This is bind database. This is the thing that creates an MSI database or a merge module database, all that kind of stuff. So, oh man. And you can see here, for example, hey, look, we're tracking a file, which is fine, but man. I need to get the file transfers back out, but all I have is a librarian. Sean, do I have to break the interface? Yeah, why not? Just because I didn't really want to break extensibility again in Preview 0. I know I said I could, I just didn't want to. But that's what you're right. I mean, that's what I'm going to have to do. Why not just create iLibrary result? That's what I'm going to have to create, an iLibrary result. And at the same time, it makes me think, hey, let's look at the linker. The linker, maybe it should have an iLinker result too, just in case we have to add things to it in the future. And honestly, make everything much more consistent, right? That makes sense, doesn't it? I'm not talking craziness here, am I? And same with compile, compile result, even though at this point in time, the compiler result is the intermediate, but maybe it will be more. It could be more. Right now, we are limited to just the intermediate. Does that make sense, Sean? I'm not. Sean's been in the extensibility interfaces enough as well, doing work to make Burn happy in various different ways. So I think that's what I'm going to need to do. Yep. Okay. We're going to pretend that I had a library result here. Yeah, I think it's not even just a choice. I think the right thing is to change it to have an iCompile result, an iLibrary result, and an iLink result. Make them all consistent with iBind result so that we can add things in the future and at least have, some sort of compatibility. I think I should go and do all that sooner than later kind of thing. All right, now let's see. So if I change this to result, so let's do this a little bit. Let's say library equals, that is still trippy. I'm not used to that. Result dot, nope. Result dot library. We're gonna pretend that we have our result. I don't think I'm gonna need the result outside any farther, so I'll just be able to assign a library on the way out. I'm gonna say result here and result here. I don't know that I need file transfers on it. In fact, I probably don't. Which probably means that layout files is it optional? I don't think file transfers are optional. Layout, sorry, I want to go to layout and look at the use of file transfers. Oh yeah, they are optional. Look at that. If there are no file transfers, if there are any, if it's null or it's empty, then we don't have to do any work. Yep. All right, so file transfers can be null, and tracked files could also be null. In our case, tracked files will not be null. In the case of a librarian, we will have tracked files. So let's go back. Build command, yes. The use of this, there we go. Tracked files, there will be a tracked files. I don't think there will be file transfers. Can there be file transfers? No, because the output of a librarian is a single file. It's not going to have any file transfers. It's just the librarian. And tracked files, it's going to then, but it will have the list of files that were inputs into the librarian, or rather, the list of files that were bound into the Wix lib as contents files. It's going to say, hey, these are all my contents files. That's the correct answer. So this is going to be null. This is going to be tracked files. And now we're going to go down into library and combine. And this is going to change to Bob. I don't know what you mean by not even bound files, Bob. I may have lost some context. I don't know if I'm at high. I don't know where I'm at. Anyway, all right. So library result, librarian result, combine result. Ooh, naming is hard. Okay. Tracked input files and the new library. All right, so. Okay. I'm going to have to figure out how to create this. This doesn't make any sense, but it'll work for now. It's library concept, so we'll do that. Nope, I need to do it this way. If I did not encounter an error, then result.library equals library. Result tracked files equals tracked files. All right. iLibrary result to go with iLibrary context. Yay. Okay. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I really thought I was going to be doing more MS Build than I was going to be doing Wix code, but here we are. Good times. Okay, so tracked files. So there's the library. That's good. Update level. That's fine. I'm looking for where are the bind files done? Let's see. Where is bind files handled? Resolve pass-through byte. I keep missing this call. Where is this call? Why can I not see it? It's right there in front of me. Okay, this call is the thing that goes through, does the resolver, and then resolves all these files, and it sets the path to the files, and then it's the actual create the library intermediate. All right, Zach, I'm glad you're having good time. This is a great way if you ever want to jump in the Wix toolset or just learn internal things to amuse your friends. Yeah, this is a place to be. All right, so, and you also get to see some of this just there's so much code that a lot of it gets paged to disk. So when I'm off in MS Build land, all of this stuff is out of my memory, and I have to go around and jump around and reload it all, which is what we're doing a lot of right now. All right. So resolve pass, find fields where this, and then we resolve the file. Yep. and there's the file, and it's not empty, then we found it successfully. So track that as the embedded file. So now we need to go tracked files dot add, and it's not as easy as just calling add on tracked files, but it's a lot like that, because that's then the file that we're going to get, and this guy is the resolved string path to the file right there. All right, we saw in, do I still have bind database, please? There we go. Let's look at tracked files. Yeah, list of I tracked files. Hey, good. It is just a list. So it is, that part is that easy. Now this is bind files, right? So we're going to say the result of this is I tracked file. There we go. So the resolve paths is going to return any tracked files that we have to add. And then we will add right here. Now let's go look and see how we add a file. I'm pretty sure it's just a matter of calling. Now the thing is, fine. I want to look at one of you guys that are adding files to the tracked files. Thank you. Yeah, backend helper. I knew it. Yeah, so this is the thing that creates a tracked file object for us. But it's only on the backend helper. Which of course the librarian is not a backend helper. So the librarian let's see. I'm done with that. Librarian, track intermediate files. Yeah, so we're going to need to have a way of creating tracked files. Who can I use for help? I don't have anything here. Gosh. We didn't really think about tracking files out of the librarian before. The librarian is kind of like a backend, but it's not. It's kind of like a binder, but not really a binder. It's interesting challenges here. Got to sit with extensibility and change it around a little bit. All right, so I don't have the extensibility place I need to give me one of these. I don't have any services down here to give me that. Okay, well, we're gonna have to do something. Track file, file, comma, tracked file type. There we go. Input. And since it'll take a source line number, that's great. So by putting a source line number, if something goes wrong, we'll be able to say exactly where it came from, which is for this symbol's source line number. There we go. So this is the symbol that we're resolving. Yep, this symbol, this field. There we go. Source line numbers to that thing. So all I need now is this XXX thing. And then I just need a library context as well. And let's see, this is a try. So I could say here, read only collection, I tracked file. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Wow, that was pretty smart. I will give it that. That was pretty smart. And then track files. There we go. So wrote all that backwards, but then we'll have tracked files. Whenever we resolve files to paths to embed, this will give us the list of files that are inputs. We will now store them in our list of tracked files, and as a result of the library doing its combine thing, we will get a list of tracked files. And then if we go back to the build command, when that finishes, we will call the layout files command with the results tracked files, right? That's what we call it here too, right? Tracked files. And we will do that, and then we will return the library. Okay, so now let's see if that's the right thing. So the library does its thing, localizations, output library. Yeah, so this is actually, ooh. Wait, ooh, maybe we found something. Oh no, this is just where I was at. Bummer. I was like, oh wait, I jumped up. Somehow I ended up in compile, looking at compile code. So if the output library, then we do that, and then we call save. Yep. So if we go look at how a database is spat out, and we look at the bind phase, here we will see the call to layout files in the bind result, right? And the database already would have been written. So what I was looking at here was whether, since the layout files is always the last thing being called here, and now that libraries have tracked files as well, my thinking was whether I should return the tracked files back out of these two if statements and just always do layout files here, instead of doing it at the end or inside these phases. Because you see here the Wix lib is saved. Essentially move it here. And then return the result here to do the tracked files. And actually I could then also, I could bring it up here. And then the bind phase, what would that do to it? It would, although we dispose of the bind result, so it has some disposable in it, which makes that harder. So bind doesn't have any outputs. Yeah. The thing is, I kind of like, this hides the context though for us. Yes, it does. So I don't really want to return the result back. Library? How about library? I think maybe what would be more consistent. This isn't used anywhere, is it? I think this is the, there we go. Let's do this instead. That would make library phase more like bind phase. It won't actually return anything. It'll just save in here, which is that. Now layout files, do we always call layout files even if there's an error? Let's see, so if we had a failure, do we want to list the files that were part of the inputs and outputs? Do we want to overwrite what might have been there before? Probably not. So if we write the library and then we write the layouts file, is that the right way to do that? Or do we do the layouts files and they say, no, I think this is the right way to do it. Yeah. And then we don't do that. And now the library phase is more like the bind phase. Something like that. So the next step is to go jump into the extensibility interface, as well as getting a tracked files thing. So let's at least, I don't have extensibility in this solution. I just opened the Wix solution. We're just going to real quick add an existing project to this thing, just for grins. We have 10 minutes left, so we're going to try to slip this in. You can't see this window? Okay, fine. Fine. What I'm going to do is go navigate to where I've got the Wix 4 source API, Wix API, and then Wix toolset.extensibility. And we're going to add this extensibility project. Woohoo, there we go. And it can't find its projects. It can't find the data project. Oh, it did. Great. Good enough. We can start here. All right. So what do we need? We're looking at the library. iLibrary. Where is it? I'm blind again here. Didn't we say it was what does the librarian say its context was? iLibrary context. Oh, it's in data, of course. All right, let's add data as well. Add existing project data. Wix toolset.data. There we go. Now we got two of the bad boys there. Okay. So where is our iLibrary context? Am I blind? And we still set extensibility. Oh, extensibility. Oh gosh, not in data. Extensibility data. Extensibility data. Yes, of course. Right. All of the interfaces that are just data are in the data names folder, namespace, folder name, whatever. Namespace in the extensibility, not in the data assembly itself, which I thought wait, no, it shouldn't be in data because data just has the raw assembly to read Wix objects like Wix PDBs and the intermediate files, not MSIs, things like that. So, but the raw and then all the symbols, that's all that's in data. These are the interfaces needed to interface with the pipeline system inside the Wix toolset. Extensions, essentially. All right, so library context. And we're going to rename this iLibrary result. Open, go change result. And we're going to open the iBind result because that's our inspiration for existence here. Yep, so result of a librarian combine operation. Service provider probably indicates whether files should be bound into the library. No, this is results. I don't need this. I want basically these two things. Except in my case, it's going to be tracked files, collection of files tracked during when binding files into the library, and output of library, and this is going to be a Wix, no, intermediate library. There we go. Did I name it correctly? So if this worked and everything just hooks up correctly, I don't know that's going to pick up mine. Let's build it real quick. Make sure I can output that built correctly. Are you guys going to find the new one? These guys are probably still picking it up off the. So one of the things that the Wix toolset does, it's one of the more complicated parts of the Wix toolset build process, is we build in layers, and the data and extensibility are in the API layer, and then they are consumed by the Wix layer, where all the Wix tools are, through NuGet. So these direct references, that's why there aren't direct references right now to these things. So it's actually going out to my to the local build folder as the NuGet store. So that's why it's not happy with me right here. All right, cool. So we have that interface. Now let's go look for bind result.cs. So the implementation of this is actually in the core itself. So let's find you. You're in the core, bind result, right in the bottom. That's great. All right, so let's look at our library context. There, we think library context. Yep. Yeah. Little hype here. Now, why do you have a disposable? The Wix out gets disposed because it has a file. Oh yeah, because the Wix out is a disk. Oh yeah, that's not as much fun. All right, anyway, Bind results have to be resolved. Our library result will not have to be resolved. So let's go ahead and copy. I'd say I should copy the bind result, but it's a bit more complicated than I need to be. So here we go, library result. All right, let's change this. Change this. Probably not going to find this type now. Nope, not until I get everything built again, updated. That's okay. Service provider? I don't think so. I don't think I need anything other than these two things, just like these two things, just like you. You are a very simple little type. Read on collection untracked files, and then intermediate library. And if we go look at the Wix, the librarian, and we look at the combine command, and we look at, yeah, there it is, the library. So there's track files, there's a library, library result, look at there. Now we just have to create a new one of these. So how do you create a bind result? Well, yeah, you ask for it from the service provider. So let's see, library context. All of this is so that we can decouple the extensibilities, the extensions from the core tool set. Library result. Yep, there we go. So when you ask for an iLibrary result, you get a library result object, and you don't have to worry about it. And then let's see. So this dot service provider dot get type get service iLibrary. Right. You don't know that type. Ta-da! iLibrary result. So I think that means, yes, so null, right. iLibrary result, that. If we did not encounter an error, then set these two types. I'm inclined to set the types even if there was an error. I'm going to set the types even if there's an error. There. All right, so what have we done? We've gone through all of this to find out that, well, one, we had a whole bunch of problems with the command line because the command line parsing has poor error handling when you don't have a proper error. So that was the first, that's where we started. And then what did we do? We hunted down in the MS build that we're missing the bind outputs file for a library. Okay, the file's missing. So when we wandered all the way down through MS build, we ended up down in here and found out that the librarian doesn't generate either one of these files. So what we're doing now is updating the librarian to correctly generate the content outputs file and all those kinds of things, because it does have binding files. It does have inputs and outputs that it needs to track. Well, not so many outputs, just the Wix lib itself, but it does have inputs that it needs to track correctly. And it's not bothering to do this. And it probably didn't in Wix 3 either, honestly, but it might have. This might have been a bug that got introduced when doing the Wix 4 work. So the end result now is that we've started gluing all this stuff together. And the real thing that tripped me up from being able to get this done perfectly or quickly was that we had to change the interface to the librarian so that it would return multiple results. Because before, when the librarian said, hey, I'm going to take all your intermediates and turn it into, or all your compiled code, your intermediates, and turn it into one intermediate, it said, here, I am done. Here's your intermediate. And by the way, I've tucked a bunch of file references into this thing, so when you save it, it's going to write, or it's going to compress all those and stick them in the Wix lib for you automatically. Oh, but by the way, I need to return you the list of files that were the input for that, but I don't have a way of doing that because the combine just returned the intermediate. And then what? Well, of course, we need to return something more complicated. So we could return a value tuple, or tuple, not a value tuple. Value tuples later. We could return a tuple, Bob's favorite type. I say that because Bob's had lots of problems with tuples. I'm not sure he's on the stream still, but if he is, I'm probably going to get an unhappy face somewhere in here. So we're not going to return a tuple because tuples have all kinds of type problems throughout the .NET system until you get to, I don't know, later than where we're at, certainly later than .NET Standard. 2. So we need to return some other object. And to do that, we return an interface because it will interact with the instance stability system. And that's where we end up with iLibrary result. We add it to the service provider, and here we are. Basically everything ready to go. I just have to build it all together. Oh, no. And creating tracked files requires calling into the system, so I'm going to have to find some way of providing tracked files, which is going to cause me to sit down and think about, should tracking files be a general problem? Because right now it's only provided to the backends, since they were the only thing thinking about binding files, which isn't really true. The librarian does it too, so maybe there should be a little bit more generic helper in here for tracking files that isn't so tied to the backend where we create things like MSI databases and burn bundles. Well, I think we've had a nice little adventure here for 90 minutes. We're not doing extra time today because I have a lot more stuff to do on this. So, I'm not sure we're going to pick up here in a week, but, we'll be back in a week and I'll have something else. Maybe I'll give you a quick summary of how I ended up solving all this, because I'm sure I'm going to solve this before then because, well, I really need to get these bugs out of my way and on to other and bigger things. But thank you for joining me. It's fantastic having all of you hang out here. It's great having the chat. Zach, welcome. Bob and Sean, as always. Hopefully we'll see all of you in the morning, because tomorrow is the Wix online meeting for this fortnight. And we will talk about fun things. In fact, I'm sure we will talk about one of the topics from the last episode where I basically had to abort my entire plan and go back to, well, basically we're going to have a design discussion about it, essentially. So this is Let's Code a Full 90 with me, Rob Menching. I'll see you guys in another week. Bye.